I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE, symbol CRL, and the Pink, symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. Welcome back to the show, Spencer.
Good to be here.
The Justin Trudeau trip to India really came back to bite him on the butt, I would think. 8 days of touring and half a day of work. And, of course, all kinds of funny pictures and videos and cartoons with him and his family dressing up in native dress. I guess the first time you do it, it's funny or interesting. After a week of that, it seems, can you find any more ethnic styles to wear? And is this, what is it, the big celebration in Winnipeg every year where you celebrate different countries and their natural cultures?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Folklorama.
Folklorama.
Yeah.
Yes, a great concept, and I think more communities should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Justin Trudeau did Folklorama and did half a day's work, and it really wasn't much of a deal with most of the benefit going to India. Did he damage Canadian relationships there, having invited a convicted terrorist to dinner?
Yeah, he definitely did. And not just the invite, but the way he handled it afterwards. That guy was invited, and it would have been obviously a problem either way, but after, the government tried to push forward a conspiracy theory, blaming rogue elements in the Indian government for the invite, which even the former head of CSIS and a national security advisor to both Harper and Trudeau, Dick Fadden, has said he doesn't think that's the case at all. So they made it much worse. He made a fool of himself dressing up everywhere he went. He lied about how much the investment deal was. He tried to say it was $1 billion coming into Canada. Turns out it was just $1 billion in total, most of it going to India. And then that invite happened, and then he tried blaming the Indian government for it. So really a huge disaster.
Yes, and a huge mistake, because India has now surpassed China as the world's biggest growing economy. So there must be lots of business opportunities there, given the right venue and the right kind of sales pitch.
Well, for sure. I mean, what's good is that they have similar values to Canada. I mean, there's a big contrast between Canada and China. China, an authoritarian society, where it looks like they're going to make the guy there, Xi Jinping, a dictator for life. So India is a lot more compatible in terms of values and history with Canada. And they have the fastest growing economy and a very large population, but also a very fast growing young population. So there's going to be a lot of potential economic growth there for a long time to come. And it's not good for a country to be throwing that opportunity away because Trudeau is trying to protect his own image and blame India.
Right. And of course, everybody knows about India and high tech and then all the IT consultants who come from there. And some incredible number of people graduate from Indian universities every year. I mean, it's in the millions. Mm-hmm. In some years, more than Canada's population, I think.
Yeah, there's a huge opportunity there, and we're missing out on it because Trudeau, I mean, he could have just taken the hit politically and just accepted it was going to be a bad week, but they tried to talk their way out of it by blaming India for it, which really it's obviously not going over well in India. They put out a strong statement saying they obviously had nothing to do with it. So we really just, for the sake of Trudeau's image, we've damaged our relationship with a very important country.
Yes, and going back to his trip to China, where it looked like basically he was kicked out of the country with security guards putting their hands over the camera lenses of the people there to cover his trip. Do you think that perhaps Trudeau should stay home and try to cut his losses here and stay out of the international thing? I know he seems to love the cameras that go off because he was some kind of glamour boy when he first got elected.
Yeah, he loves the spotlight too much to stay home. I mean, The Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, I may not agree with her on many things politically, but I think she's someone who, she's a smart person. She knows how to deal with people on the international stage. She doesn't make a fool of herself the way Trudeau has. So I think really just, if for the good of the country until he's defeated, which hopefully happens as soon as possible, I think the best case scenario until then is just send Chrystia Freeland to do those things, and Trudeau stays home and, takes some selfies in the mirror or something. I don't know.
Well, Freeland was born in Peace River, Alberta, my hometown. So, of course, she's a sensible person.
Yeah, no bias there from you at all.
Well, you can put up with those minus 40 winters. I think you can put up with anything.
Yeah.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after the break.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead zinc silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic Engineer gold mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, it looks like the Trudeau trip to India also damaged him politically at home.
Oh, for sure. A poll came out after the trip, which had the Liberals, I think they dropped 5 points from December, and the Conservatives were up 7 points. So Conservatives now 38, Liberals 33. The first time that poll, the Ipsos poll, had shown the Conservatives in the lead since the election. So that definitely hurt his image. I think what often happens with politicians is their strength becomes a weakness. So his perceived strength was that he was popular on the world stage. He liked the cameras, the media covered him. And I think people really saw that that's very superficial and that there's no real intellect or common sense behind it. And that was really exposed in India. And I think people are not liking what they're seeing.
Well, Trudeau has this theory that you can reform former terrorists. Maybe that's why he invited one to lunch.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that, because there's a fellow born in Kuwait, and then I guess got Canadian citizenship, and then was in the States, and he was just convicted actually of trying to do a plot in the States, which he himself said he wanted to do the next 9/11, and now his family is saying that they want him to get a short sentence in the United States so he can come back to Canada and get counseling and support and rehabilitation. So already we're seeing people who want to kill people want to come back to Canada and get Trudeau's nice rehabilitation program, because he sent out a signal that we're a weak country that can be taken advantage of. So that's not a good thing either.
Well, if you remember last summer, we had hundreds of immigrants come in from the U.S. who were trying to avoid American laws or changes in U.S. legislation, to the extent that they had to open up the Olympic Stadium to house all these people. So the message that Canada is sending out is we're pretty soft on illegal immigration.
Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate because we opened up the Olympic Stadium for people who weren't from this country. But yet there's thousands of homeless people in Montreal, and the stadium was never opened up for them. So it's kind of an interesting set of priorities where our own homeless people get abandoned by the government, and then people who have broken Canada's laws get supported. It's pretty backwards.
Well, across the nation, homelessness is a big problem, and we don't see much of an effort by the federal government to do anything about it. And it all started with the Liberals under Jean Chrétien, who cut off funding for social housing back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting the things the government is able to find money for. They say we can't find money to help our veterans, we can't find money to help our homeless people, but they can find money to build, for example, a road for the Jordanian military. The government committed to building a road for that. So it's a pretty messed up set of priorities when we're helping the militaries of other countries build roads, and our own people are being left behind.
Well, another example of great federal money waste is the $8 million hockey rink in front of the Parliament buildings where you have just a few blocks away the world's longest skating rink in the Rideau Canal.
Yeah, maybe it was too far for the politicians to walk to, though. Maybe they didn't want to actually have to leave Parliament to do some skating, so.
Well, it was all downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not taking advantage. I mean, truly, I mean, I know hockey is the symbol of Canada, but to build a professional hockey rink where really that $5 million could have gone to solve undrinkable water in a lot of native communities.
Well, I don't even know if they allowed hockey on that rink. I think it might have been just a skating rink. I saw an article somewhere where they said they weren't allowing much hockey there. So, but yeah, I mean, the priorities are totally backwards. The government talked about how they were going to, help reserves with water problems, and they haven't really done much of anything. In fact, a recent study showed there were more boil water advisories under Trudeau than under Harper. So, yeah, they talk a good game, but they don't back it up.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after this.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, a court in Nanaimo has ruled that the Canadian Revenue Agency owes this family $1.7 million for the harassment that this family went under when they were falsely accused of cooking their books at their restaurant. Oh, sorry about the pun. I just thought of, but, anyway, they were found to be malicious and had evil intent when they went after this family, who was accused of skimming tips from their staff and then claiming that they'd earned that money legitimately. And all that family had done was consolidate a bunch of bank accounts they had into one. So it looked like they had a lot more money than they did, but in honesty, they hadn't done anything wrong and they were forced into bankruptcy. Are other people being persecuted, hounded by the Canadian Revenue Agency on false pretenses?
Well, the government has said that they're going after tips now, so they've already launched a crackdown in some parts of the country, and then they say they're going to do it nationwide where they're going after unreported tip income. And what's really disturbing about that is you can see that they're going after a little guy, right? They're going after people who barely make ends meet, get a few tips to help them out. Oh, you didn't report it, we're going to go after you. And then we're losing up to $15 billion every year because people are putting their money in offshore tax havens, foreign offshore tax havens. So they're not doing much about that, probably because those people who are doing that are so well connected to all the politicians. But I mean, it's just people have to realize that they're going after the little guy and the ones who are depriving the country of billions of dollars by using offshore tax havens. Doesn't seem like anything's happening to them.
Well, the people who are doing those offshore tax havens are former prime ministers.
Mm-hmm.
And up until, I think, a week or two ago, Canada was the only country that hadn't done anything about the findings of the Panama Papers.
Yeah, not surprising. I mean, Trudeau doesn't serve the Canadian people. He serves the elites. So he has no interest in actually going after it. I mean, they'll probably do one or two little things so they can claim, hold up some piece of paper and say, oh, look, we have a commission investigating it. But they're not really going to do anything about it because that's the people who really control the government and who the government works for obviously don't want to be paying more taxes.
Also in Vancouver, it's been obvious that a lot of money laundering went on with the real estate industry. Every real estate transaction every realtor is supposed to fill out a form called a FinTrack about where you come from, where the money came from, who's financing everything. But in most cases, up until, they said you have to enforce the law, they weren't filling out those forms because they were glad to get literally tens of millions in cash for properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it probably has a lot to do with the money coming from China as well. So, yeah, politicians haven't seemed to show much interest in doing anything about that.
And the Liberal government in BC disbanded the police unit that was supposed to look after money laundering in casinos. It was reactivated, I think, a few weeks before the election, just so they could say, well, you see, we brought it back. But I heard stories, from a friend of mine. She said she had $1,000 in chips at a casino, and a guy offered to buy them off her for $1,300. And she went to the window at the casino and said, is this unusual? And they said, oh no, that happens here all the time. Now, why would somebody pay you an extra $300 for your chips?
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of weird stuff going on.
The federal budget, did you see anything in there that's good for the average person?
No, I don't think so. There's a lot of virtue signaling and talk about, it's interesting. Maxime Bernier had some great tweets recently where he was criticizing the budget because they kept referring to racialized Canadians, which is basically where it's a far left concept where they divide everybody up into either everyone white on one side, everyone non-white on the other, and they call everyone non-white racialized, and they say the budget's going to help racialize Canadians. That kind of identity politics is very dangerous. You should be bringing the country together based on common values, not dividing people by their race. But yeah, the budget was all about virtue signaling, and the Trudeau government seems like that's what they're doubling down on. But the problem with the budget is it doesn't actually deal with real problems. I mean, NAFTA is in big trouble. We've got tariffs against us. We're having trouble competing with the U.S. after tax increases. Meanwhile, we're putting in a carbon tax. All this is happening, and the budget didn't have anything to address competitiveness or any contingency plans for the end of NAFTA or tariffs or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of nice, fluffy virtue signaling talk, but nothing of substance.
Right, and what about Bill Morneau as finance minister? Did he send a lot of negative signals for his government with his attack on small business that he backed down on, or did he really back down on it?
Yeah, I think, we're not going to know for sure until they actually implement things, but the changes they are making are still opposed by most small businesses, and, the attention has gone away from it because there's more talk about tariffs and NAFTA and other issues, but that's still in there. And small businesses still aren't happy about it. So, I'm kind of surprised Bill Morneau was still on that job, to be honest, after all the, ethical issues he had in the media, a lot of discussion around that. He became very unpopular with Canadians, but it seems like Trudeau doesn't really care about that.
Do you think he spends so much time grooming in the mirror that he doesn't know what's happening in the country?
Trudeau or Morneau?
Both.
Yeah, I think it's their ideology is getting in the way of what has to be done. I mean, they're all about increasing the size of government, making politicians more powerful at the expense of the people. And to respond to what's happening in the States and in other countries, we need to lower taxes, reduce regulations, get rid of the carbon tax. But for them to do that, they'd have to admit that they've been wrong for the last 2 years, which they're not going to do.
Is there any evidence that this carbon tax would do anything to affect global climate change?
No. It's just about making money for the government.
I mean, after all, Canada produces something like less than 1% of the world's greenhouse gases, and we're the coldest nation on the planet. So what sense do carbon taxes make when we have lots of fossil fuel to use?
Mm-hmm. Plus, if you add in the amount of trees we have, the massive amount of forest, which is interesting because Catherine McKenna, she was talking about how the government wasn't going to meet the Paris Climate Accord goals, according to a recent study, and said they're counting on getting there by increasing reforestation. So she's admitting that Canada should be getting credit for the carbon we absorb in the forest. But, numerous studies have shown that if we do get credit for that, then Canada's already carbon neutral. So why are we doing anything to strangle our economy when we're already doing far more than our part?
Well, I saw a study that said Canada absorbs 30 to 40% more than what it produces in carbon. So every Canadian should actually be getting a tax credit for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be common sense, but I don't think the government's going to do that anytime soon.
Well, even if you look at the prairies, I mean, just the crops or the grass that grows there, that's absorbing carbon.
Mm.
You don't just need big trees to do it.
Yeah, and what's so absurd about all this is, the big emitters, like India and China, I mean, I don't blame those countries for emitting. I mean, they're trying to achieve economic growth the same way we did with similar industries, so that means there's going to be more emissions. But those countries are building a bunch of new coal plants. China's like funding hundreds of new coal plants around the world, and they somehow get credit for climate action. And we're here strangling our economy while they keep polluting. So, very interesting.
Do you think President Trump is taking advantage of Justin Trudeau with his tariff plans?
I think in part. I think the issue is that, he's kind of taking advantage of a lot of countries. I'm not a big fan of what Trump is doing just because I think he should be focused on China. I think tariffs can definitely be a good thing, but they need to be focused on the countries that are actually to blame. Canada's trade in steel with the U.S. is almost perfectly balanced. And Trump has said he wants balanced trade, so he already has that with Canada when it comes to steel. But I think when it comes to China, I mean, they overproduce and then sell at a very low price, so they dump a bunch of steel on the market, which lowers the price altogether. And that's had a devastating impact on the U.S. steel industry. So targeting China with tariffs for sure makes sense. But to extend it to every country, including Canada, is not a smart move, in my opinion. I do think with Trudeau, though, I mean, he hasn't shown any strategic ability on the world stage at this point, so I don't think Canadians have too much confidence that he can handle an issue like this.
Do you start to cringe now when he starts dealing with international relations?
Yeah, it's never good. I think he's very naive about how things work, and two, he just thinks that he can say a few nice words and everyone else will be nice to him and nice to Canada, and the world doesn't work that way. I mean, the economy is in many ways a competition with other countries, and we have to be tough and we have to win. And if we're not tough and we just assume that everything will turn out okay, then yeah, we'll get taken advantage of and we'll end up being poorer.
Another issue, replacing Canada's aging F-18s with a bunch of old F-18s from Australia.
Yeah.
How is
brilliant
that
plan?
Yes, I could see any opponents go, oh, they're Australian, so they must have a little more bounce.
Yeah, I mean, it's foolish. I mean, we should have, in my opinion, just gotten the F-35. So we're already a part of that project. We'd already put money into it. Part of the production is in Canada, so we would be helping create more jobs in Canada by being a part of it as well. And the plane, it had some problems at the beginning, but they have made a lot of changes and improvements. And that's what Australia is doing. Australia is getting the F-35s and shipping their garbage planes to us. So it's in two ways that's a problem, because one, it's disrespectful to the pilots to put them in old planes that are going to be breaking down, costing your country a lot of money and won't be too good. So it's not nice to the pilots who have to fly them. But also it's not good for the country. I mean, we have a lot of land mass to cover. We need good planes to cover it, and we should be getting the best in the world, not leftovers from other countries.
Well, the Super Hornets, the logical replacement, really, though, much more affordable than the F-35, which is a single-engine airplane, by the way. If you're patrolling over the Arctic, your nearest rescue is a week away if you have to eject, and your survival suit will keep you alive for half an hour. So it's not the best plane for patrolling the Arctic. Plus, if you get a Super Hornet, your mechanics don't really have to be retrained, because the Super Hornet's just a regular Hornet, only it's 25% bigger and much more fuel efficient. So you're just putting bigger parts in it. We don't have to do much to retrain stuff. Plus, the Super Hornet would refuel the same way that Canada's current planes do. I don't know about the F-35. Would they have to change the refueling system on it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, Canada doesn't have many refueling planes either way, so we'd probably have to get a few of those anyway. Anything would be better, to be honest, than just getting old F-18s. I mean, that's literally, it's stupid. You replace an old plane with the exact same plane that's just as old, not really a real replacement. So yeah, it's not good at all, but it's continuing a trend with the government, and to be honest, previous governments, where the military always gets left to the last minute. They get very little money, and our country's left basically undefended, which is ironic because some of the politicians who are the most anti-American and criticize the U.S. the most create a defense policy that makes our country so weak that our only way to defend ourselves is to just beg the Americans to do it for us if we're ever in real trouble. So it's very hypocritical. And, at some point we're going to have to make investments in defense to protect our country, or else we're going to be totally vulnerable.
If Trudeau doesn't get reelected, would you expect him to show up on Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah, he'd probably be a good fit there.
He probably has the outfits already.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a little more his calling than being Prime Minister.
Spencer, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
My guest has been investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at spencerfernando.com. If you have any questions for Spencer or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.